The National Desk, America's News, now.
A week of wicked weather ends, and already another threat begins from the north to the south. Who is in the path of the latest severe storms?
South Africa contends that Israel has transgressed Article 2 of the Convention by committing actions that fall within the definition of genocide.
More than just a case to end the war, Israel is charged with going too far in their response against Hamas. What the United States has to say as the war continues. And the federal government is spending hundreds of millions of dollars on EV infrastructure, but one company is cutting their electric vehicle fleet drastically. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David, and breaking news as we come on the air any minute now. The UK and the United States could carry out joint airstrikes against Houthi rebels inside of Yemen in response to the continued attacks on merchant ships in the Red Sea. The Standard in England now reporting that UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak held an emergency cabinet meeting earlier tonight.
I'm not going to telegraph punches one way or another here. We're going to do what we have to do to counter and defeat these threats that the Houthis keep throwing up on commercial shipping in the Red Sea. We'll continue to consult with allies and partners about the appropriate next steps, but that's as far as I'll go.
Strikes inside Yemen risk sparking a regional powder keg as the leader of the Iranian-backed group says any military action against them will be met with a return of force. This is a developing story, one we will continue to monitor at thenationaldesk.com, and you can always check online for breaking news headlines. Right now, another intense storm is getting stronger, forecast to impact around 150 million Americans. Tonight, snow and strong winds are forecast for the central U.S. Severe thunderstorms could hit a large part of the south, bringing tornadoes, also bringing large hail and damaging winds. The worst of the storm's impact, that's expected to be tomorrow. Around a foot of snow forecast for parts of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Illinois. Winds up to 60 miles an hour are likely. Severe thunderstorms are going to move to the southeast and mid-Atlantic. Meantime, many areas on the East Coast could see major flooding. The Lake Tahoe, California resort where an avalanche killed one person yesterday has reopened. We've also learned that it was California resident Kenneth Kidd, aged 66, who died. 3 other skiers with non-life-threatening injuries were treated and released. The Sierra Avalanche Center said the avalanche was caused by severe weather. And new tonight, Boeing now under investigation by the Federal Aviation Administration. The agency saying today it will determine whether Boeing's planes conformed to their approved designs and were in a condition for safe operation in compliance with FAA regulations. The probe comes less than a week after a door plug blew out of a Boeing 737 MAX 9 during an Alaska Airlines flight. And the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, has concluded his tour of the Middle East region and now is headed back to the United States. Before leaving the region, he met with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and spoke about getting more aid into Gaza, as well as creating a situation he believes can become a lasting peace after the war.
From Israel's perspective, if you can have a future where they're integrated into the region, relations are normalized with other countries, where they have the necessary assurances, commitments, guarantees for their security. That's a very attractive pathway. But it's also clear that that requires a pathway to a Palestinian state.
Egypt and Jordan, among other Mideast nations, agreed with Secretary Blinken that the 2.3 million people in Gaza must not be forced to leave when the campaign is over. It is something Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said Israel doesn't want, but hard-right members of Israel's government have been pushing for. At The Hague in the Netherlands, South Africa made its case to the International Court of Justice that Israel has been committing genocide inside of Gaza following the attacks of Hamas on October 7th. Genocide is defined by the UN as an act committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group.
No armed attack on a state territory, no matter how serious, even an attack involving atrocity crimes, can provide any justification for or defense to breaches to the convention.
Israel has a genocidal intent against the Palestinians in Gaza. That is evident from the way in which Israel's military attack is being conducted.
Among the claims by the South Africans is the disproportionate destruction of cities in Gaza. The AP reports as much as 33% of all buildings have been destroyed or damaged. More than 85% of the population has been displaced, and the death toll reported by Hamas is at over 23,000, representing more than 1% of the population. Israel, of course, will defend itself before the court. That happens tomorrow, but throughout the war has claimed they only attack military targets, but Hamas uses civilians as human shields. The U.S. State Department today reiterated its support for Israel.
The allegations that Israel is committing genocide are unfounded.
Iran, meantime, has confirmed their Navy hijacked an oil tanker off the coast of Oman that was taking 145,000 tons of oil from Iraq to Turkey. Iran claims it was a lawful abduction in response to an Iranian oil tanker that was seized by the United States last year. The United States wants the tanker and crew immediately released and said they will continue to hold the Iranian regime accountable. The civil fraud trial against Donald Trump and the Trump Organization that started back in October is now over. Donald Trump was allowed to address the court for 5 minutes after his lawyers concluded their closing arguments. According to reports from inside, the former president said he did nothing wrong and that all of his financial statements were, quote, perfect. Upon leaving the courtroom, Trump said the fraud was committed against him.
But this is a political witch hunt, the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. They owe me damages for what they've done. I don't know that we're going to get a fair ruling, but everybody knows what I just said. This is a sham, and it's a shame.
The Attorney General office is asking for $370 million in damages and a ban on Donald Trump and his sons from being involved in any real estate business in New York. Judge Engoron ruled against Trump before the trial started, so his decision will be on the amount owed here. He says he hopes to have a ruling by the end of the month. But before things even got started today, law enforcement was called to the home of that judge, Judge Arthur Engoron, responding to a bomb threat. It's unclear if he was at home at the time, but Nassau County Police say nothing was found at the location. And one day after walking into a congressional hearing, Hunter Biden was in an L.A. courtroom pleading not guilty to 9 federal tax charges. The president's son accused of failing to pay more than $1 million in taxes and filing fraudulent forms with the IRS. The judge is proposing a June start date for a trial. More than 150 million people die every single day. 150 rather. More than 150 people die every single day from overdoses related to fentanyl and other synthetic opioids. That's according to the CDC. On Capitol Hill on Thursday, rapper turned country artist Jelly Roll appeared before a group of senators to call on Congress to act. The National Desk's Atral Nashar reports on what he and other advocates say should be done to address this deadly issue.
Democrats, Republicans, law enforcement, and a Grammy-nominated artist getting together to address a problem that touches just about every American.
Every drug I've seen, nothing has held a candle to what's happening with fentanyl.
Jason DeFord, known by his stage name Jelly Roll, using his background as a former drug dealer and his platform as a rising voice in the music industry, to confront the fentanyl crisis.
I was a part of the problem. I am here now standing as a man that wants to be a part of the solution.
He joined law enforcement leaders Thursday to appear before the Senate Banking Committee, urging the passage of the Fend Off Fentanyl Act. The bill, which is currently stalled in Congress, would declare international trafficking of fentanyl a national emergency, ramp up sanctions against the groups behind it, and use proceeds from sanction enforcement to bolster law enforcement. All agree there's more to do, like cracking down on the illicit financing of drug operations, often involving crypto or apps like WeChat Pay.
Never in my career with the DEA has a criminal organization had the benefit of an encrypted global network.
Where Democrats and Republicans are split is how to start addressing the flow of fentanyl through the U.S. southern border.
We can secure the border. It's an open, bleeding wound.
In 2021, over 90% of fentanyl seizures occurred at legal crossing points.
DeFord calling out their partisan divide.
We don't see nothing happening in D.C. except fights.
Now, DeFord reminded senators nothing can happen without cooperation from the House, where currently there's a partisan standoff on government spending rooted in differences about what else but border policy.
Atra, where does the Fend Off Fentanyl Act stand? What will it take for it to become law?
Yeah, it's got so much bipartisan support. It passed unanimously out of the Senate Banking Committee and in the full Senate got overwhelming bipartisan support. It was in fact bundled into the upper chamber's National Defense Authorization Act. But we're seeing very little movement on this or anything in the House right now as House Speaker Mike Johnson is trying to negotiate with Democrats and members of his own party on government spending and foreign aid.
Hoping for the sake of the country it does move forward. Atra El-Nashar live in Washington, D.C. for us. Thank you. A third suspect has been arrested in the double murders of a mother-to-be and her boyfriend in San Antonio, Texas. 47-year-old Myrta Romanos faces 3 charges, including abuse of a corpse and tampering with evidence. Authorities believe Romanos is the stepmother to Christopher Preciado and spouse of his father, Ramon Preciado.
That video surveillance shows her at the home right after the murders, and she was seen on video surveillance leaving in that black truck that we all saw on the surveillance video, and then returning to her home with Christopher and Ramon in that truck.
Police believe there are no other suspects. Both victims were found with gunshot wounds. Coming up, a group of Jewish students is now suing Harvard what they say the university did wrong. Then new information from cardiologists about heart health, the 8 small changes that can lead to dramatic improvements. And later, a Texas real estate development has come under fire from conservatives for allegedly offering permanent housing to undocumented migrants. How the CEO responded in new testimony. And U.S. jobless claims fell to their lowest level in almost 3 months last week, suggesting a resilient labor market in the face of high interest rates. Unemployment benefit applications, those dropped to 202,000, down by about 1,000. It reflects the number of layoffs. Inflation, meantime, that rose slightly last month. The Commerce Department reporting today that prices were up 3.4% in December as compared to a year earlier. That was up from 3.1% inflation in November. Despite the low unemployment, a new Harris poll finds about 76% of Americans are not feeling the economy getting better. Overall, 37% rate their financial situation as poor. That's 42% for Republicans, 43% for women, and 57% for renters. The U.S. national debt has now surpassed $34 trillion. It's an astonishing figure looming large over talks on Capitol Hill over a federal spending bill that has been stalled for months. National correspondent Christine Frizzell spoke to one of the most outspoken critics about how the government spends your money.
At the Department of Justice, not a week goes by where there are not multiple cases prosecuted of those who took advantage of the COVID-19 pandemic and the federal aid that followed. To date, there has been more than $836 million in COVID fraud, including $38 million in payments to those who the government knew had died. And then there are the scammers who got aid despite submitting photos of dolls with their applications, as reported on by The Messenger.
Maybe we don't have the best oversight on the program. If you can cut out a picture of Barbie, put it on an ID, take a picture of your ID, and submit to the government and get money.
Every year, Senator Rand Paul airs his spending grievances in his Festivus report. This year, highlighting what he sees as $900 billion in waste, including $89 million worth of military equipment that was improperly stored. $2.7 million to fund research focused on cats walking on a treadmill, not American cats, but cats from Russia, and another $6 million to help boost tourism in Egypt.
Egypt gets over $1 billion a year in military aid as well. So they get military aid, now we give them tourism aid, and they're run by a dictator, a guy that doesn't get elections.
Government waste, along with the viability of long-term entitlement programs, are reasons why some, like Senators Mitt Romney and Joe Manchin, have proposed creating a bicameral bipartisan commission to focus on improving the country's financial health.
There's no guarantee of success, but it's by far the best option there is to deal with the real structural issues: Social Security, Medicare, taxes.
The increased scrutiny on federal spending as Congress is in the middle of an intense fight over how to best fund the government, where to dole out the money, and where to cut back, with January 19th and February 2nd deadlines fast approaching. I'm Christine Frizzell for the National Desk.
Well, the Defense Department's internal watchdog now looking into Secretary Lloyd Austin's secretive hospital stay. The Pentagon has faced backlash for not initially telling the White House about Austin's prostate cancer and subsequent hospitalization for related complications. The Inspector General's office said today it will investigate the DoD's policies and procedures. 6 Jewish students now suing Harvard over claims of anti-Semitism on campus. They say Harvard has failed to protect Jewish students from harassment and has hired faculty who support violence against Jews and spread anti-Semitic messages. The students claim the school is violating Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Harvard has not yet commented on the lawsuit. EVs, they are getting a big funding boost. Today, the Biden administration announced more than $620 million for new charging stations across the U.S. It'll go towards 47 projects in 22 states, plus Puerto Rico. 7,500 new charging ports will be built, plus EV and hydrogen fueling stops for freight trucks. The money comes from the bipartisan infrastructure law. Rental car company Hertz is selling around 20,000 of its EV vehicles because of low demand and high expenses. Hertz said today it also plans to buy more gas-powered cars. It's a change from the company's original goal to make a quarter of its fleet electric by the end of the year. Hertz predicts its fourth quarter revenue will be higher than a year earlier. And Apple is the most valuable company in the world again after Microsoft bumped it out of the top spot earlier today. Apple is valued at $2.886 trillion. Microsoft is valued at $2.859 trillion. And one analyst says Microsoft is growing faster and can benefit more from generative AI. Apple is also facing increasing concerns over demand. A new message from cardiologists today say most heart events are preventable and that even small changes add to big results. Medical reporter Liz Bonas shares Life's Essential 8.
Hey there, everybody. The American Heart Association calling these Life's Essential 8 because they found that they're some of the most significant steps to improve and maintain your cardiovascular health. Those who try and incorporate them say they really do make a life-saving difference.
I had open heart surgery a few years ago, and since then I've been a regular patient of the doctor's, and I just think he's outstanding.
That doctor Tom McCabe is talking about is preventive cardiologist Joel Foreman of Ohio's Christ Hospital Heart and Vascular Center.
He just upped my water game 6 months ago, and I can really feel the difference.
And even though Tom has a history of heart disease, the basic plan to prevent future problems prescribed for his health could work for all of us.
We are more aggressive once you have an event because you establish yourself as higher risk, okay? So we'll lower the cholesterol more. We will probably lower the blood pressure a little bit more, but some of the advice is the same.
It's all because Life's Essential 8, as this graphic provided by the American Heart Association shows, Dr. Foreman says works at almost any stage. They include eating better, being more active, getting healthy sleep, managing weight, controlling cholesterol, managing blood sugars, and maintaining normal blood pressure.
I keep up on all of those. I think that the more you keep up with it, the less trouble you have.
Now, the good news is they add up. So even if you can only start with a few, you can still bring your risk down. With your health news, I'm Liz Bonas reporting.
Really good tips there, Liz. Thank you. And coming up, what led up to this dangerous flooding here that happened on a ferry in Washington state? We'll be right back. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America.
A close call for one Washington State Ferries crew navigating these treacherous waters in the Straits of Juan de Fuca during windy conditions Tuesday. In video shot by an employee, you can see the waves crashing onto the ferry, appearing to jostle around some employee vehicles on board.
I just couldn't believe it. It was very frightening. I would never want to be on a ferry like that. It's bad enough having to cross it, let alone all the water coming in on the boat.
A spokesperson with Washington State Ferries shared this video was taken while the crew was moving the Issaquah from Eagle Harbor on Bainbridge Island to Anacortes. And while the first half of that journey went smoothly, the second half became a bit dicey.
I mean, Mother Nature's the boss, and as much as we plan for these type of things and as big as these boats are, as soon as that boat left the shelter of the Sound and ended up in the Straits of Juan de Fuca, really, that's a pretty hairy area up there, and the wind and waves can come up really quick. And caught us a little bit off guard.
Going
Colony Ridge became a lightning rod for conservative criticism in a matter of days after right-wing media outlets began reporting that the Liberty County community was housing undocumented migrants, prompting a surge in crime.
Are you directly targeting undocumented migrants to provide permanent housing?
No, that's not correct.
John Harris, CEO of the Colony Ridge development, testified before the House State Affairs Committee on Thursday, saying nothing was done illegally.
And you didn't violate any laws in selling to those persons.
That's absolutely right.
All you need is one inside your home.
Unlike smoke alarms where they have to be distributed throughout the house, carbon monoxide detectors usually are placed somewhere in a central location where the air is circulating.
Former Ohio Fire Marshal Robert Relag has decades of experience. He says a carbon monoxide detector will pick up on any increase of the deadly gas, which can leak from all kinds of things, including your furnace, fireplace, gas stove, space heaters, and other heating appliances.
It's colorless, it's odorless, it's something that just happens.
Well, coming up, what's thought to be the very first piece of mail sent using a stamp will be auctioned off. How much it could go for when we come back. Well, this right here is the first piece of mail using a prepaid stamp, as far as we know, and it's slated for auction. Sotheby's in New York says it could get up to $2.5 million, if you can believe it. The penny black stamp is the world's first stick-on stamp. The envelope is dated May 2nd, 1840, addressed to an ironworks manager in England. Can you believe it? Pretty incredible. Just cost you $2.5 million. Well, that does it for this edition of the National Desk. We do invite you to join us again this evening for more coverage on America's top stories. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching.